So good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to AI Business Asia podcast, where we explore the crossroad and the future of AI in business. I'm your host, Leo Jiang, as the former Chief Digital Officer of Huawei and top 10 global CDOs, founder of Ground AI. I have the experience in this space. Today, we're actually going to interview the world best digital bank, DBS Bank, the largest listed company in Singapore. First one surpasses Singapore dollar 100 billion in market capitalization. Also recognized as the most innovative bank in APAC and by the banker in 2024. And we are here today to find out how they did it and what the future holds for the bank with Him Chuan Lim, the CEO of DBS Singapore, to join our podcast. Him Chuan, being with the bank for over 23 years, have held many executive positions, CEO of DBS Taiwan, group executive, head of a group strategy and transformation. The list goes on. So welcome to the show, Him Chuan.
Thank you so much, Leo, and good to see you finally.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a while since we caught up in the AI Summit last year. So thanks again for being here with us in person. Maybe to start with, just give the audience a bit of taste of your 23 years being with the bank, and how was that journey like?
Wow. Actually, to be more precise, it's almost 24 years. So in about a month's time, I will have completed 24 years at DBS Bank. And this will be my 10th role, right, in my career. Right? So 8 roles at DBS and, one role at JP Morgan, my first banking job. And then before JP Morgan, I actually started off working for PW, Powerhouse without a C, not PwC. So my current job, as you mentioned, I'm now the country head for Singapore at DBS Bank, which I only started like 3 months ago. But before that, I've done different things at DBS Bank, including being the CEO for DBS in Taiwan. And I was very lucky that when I was there, we also did the Citibank acquisition for the retail business, making DBS now the largest foreign bank in Taiwan. And in addition, I've done different roles, including most recently on transformation, on AI, on strategy. I've done internal audit head role. I've done, product roles for cash management and trade finance, risk management, Basel II. So pretty much, quite a complete, spectrum of the different businesses, as well as, the support functions at DBS Bank. And I'm just grateful, right, for the different platforms that I was given to be able to learn, as well as to contribute to the transformation of DBS Bank in the last 15 years or so.
Yeah, we're definitely going to dive into the transformation journey and all the pitfalls that you have seen and opportunity that you unlocked. But before that, what I found really interesting about you is you have very balanced view between the West and the East. One of the very few executives have a strong willingness to advocate the Chinese wisdoms, either it's old words. And with that, actually, I'm a big fan of you, obviously on LinkedIn, so I follow you a lot. I'm just going to share this with the audience, like something you have.
You're going to show something from LinkedIn?
Yeah. So I'm going to just share my screen. So this one, let me just follow that up. Okay, so this is something you posted recently, right? So Chinese goes, 信心从接受自己的缺点开始. Confidence begins with acknowledging our own weakness.
Yes.
I mean, for me, it strikes me strongly. I mean, that's just one, like the way you interpreted wisdom and advocating. Other things I've seen, like this is one, like I've seen you posting a lot about, Chinese words and calligraphy and how these words, 行, for example, it's the English word of action, but the Chinese word is 行. In the case, we have 2 identities. One is our real self and one is our imaginary self. And how we balancing what we want to be versus who we are is quite different. Like for me, this is such unique view of leadership. So I just want to ask you, so let me stop sharing. What is leadership? What is the most important traits for you as a leader?
No, I think thank you for following me on LinkedIn and liking my post. Started doing that about 2 years ago. Okay, but maybe like less than 2 years, about 15 months ago. To share, my reflections, okay, on what I encountered in the course of my work or in my workplace, friends and all that. And I see that you have something.
Yeah, sorry. I realized I did just now. I wasn't able to share. So while you're going through this, I just want to make sure people see what
Right.
I was talking about here. So
Oh, this one. This is the thing one.
so this one is where you talk about confidence beginning with acknowledging our own weakness,
Yes.
and the word of act
X.
to represent the true identity of ourselves. Sorry, it's something. It was there was a bit of a glitch on how I
Yeah,
shared.
no problem. Yeah. So anyway, I have actually referred to this word "听," right, in Chinese, right, which is to listen, as a very important first step in anything that we do, right? Because to me, whether you are a leader or whether you are just working for someone, anything that we do, I think is very important to first not to react, but just to listen. Because if we don't listen carefully, then we might be doing something that is actually going to be not as purposeful and also not addressing the jobs to be done. So I've been actually advocating this importance of listening for many years in my different roles, right? And the way I look at the word listen, if you look at the traditional form of the Chinese character, it is written with a year, right? So you have listen with your ears, and then at the same time you have to listen to the speaker with respect, like the person is speaking like a king. And then at the same time you also need to observe, right, how the person speaks with your eyes wide open, 10 eyes, 10个目, 10 eyes wide open, and also more importantly with one heart. And so listening with an intent, listening with a purpose to want to learn something is important. So that's how I've kind of like referenced the word listen in this form in a lot of my communication with my colleagues, with my teams, to remind them and remind myself that let's be respectful and listen in order to be effective. So, and because of that, I posted something back in December 2023, and I received a lot of good feedback from friends around me, and they say, "Hey, it's actually an interesting way of looking at things and all that." Oh, and that was also in the context of was around the year-end appraisal period, right? Whereby a lot of the performance appraisals actually require both the manager and the staff to have this willingness to listen to each other. And because I got a lot of good feedback, then I realized that hey, that is not the only word in Chinese that has got meanings that we could learn from. And so it prompted me to then do a lot more reflections and discovery. And my God, the more I went through the whole universe of all the Chinese characters, I realized that actually Chinese characters have two forms. First, we have the pictograms, 象形字. So for example, like Chuan, like my name is Chuan, right? So Chuan is actually river. And so it takes the form of like a flowing river, right? 山化. But if you look at a word like 听, okay, or a word like 行, these are actually more 会意字, which means that these are ideograms, and it's actually created using a combination of 象形字 and a few other things to create meaning for the readers or the users. And so since then, every week around maybe Friday evening or Saturday morning or weekend, I will then make an effort to reflect on my encounters for the week. We went through in our life or at work. It's not necessarily perfect and smooth sailing. Okay, there are ups and downs, twists and turns. Sometimes things that we expected to happen, sometimes we are actually thrown a particular situation that we have to manage, respond to, and the outcomes could be big. Number two is I feel that there are a lot of learnings in the course of what I've encountered, and it will be a waste if I just let all these learnings go away. So for my own purpose, I want to just use the post as a journal, right? To just put down my reflections on what I have learned. But then I feel that it's a waste if I just only keep it to myself. If I can share that learning with others, it's also a good way for me to maybe get feedback from the others to learn better. But because I do not want to do it a conventional way, or just putting down, my learnings, I want to use a form of communication that is fun, out of the box, but it's easy for people to remember. And I realized that, all these Chinese characters, actually, they are very succinct. They are kind of like, interesting. That's why then also is for me to continue to practice the use of Chinese language that I've actually learned in, all my years. So I apply this out of the box thinking, right, to communicate my learnings. And finally, as I did all the postings, it is also a very good way to upkeep my mental well-being. It is, in a sense, it's like an outlet for me. So I reach out to people. And I get, many friends out there in the world that I have never met before, but they all came to me. Like, for example, yourself. I say, hey, I like your sharing. I learned something. So because of that, I was able to connect with many people in the social space that I benefited. So in a nutshell, there are 4 things that I benefited by doing this. Number 1 is I find that it's a good way for me to just say, okay, be grateful. Number 2, it is also a way for me to reflect. And number 3, it is out of the box thinking, approach to communication. And number 4 is about my well-being, my wellness, mental wellness. Be grateful, D, to reflect, R, out of the box thinking, O, and then well-being, which is W. So GROW. So that's the way I try to grow. Grow. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. And so in a sense, it's kind of like a long-winded way of answering your question on leadership, because I feel that as leaders, it is not just about giving instructions, and kind of like making people follow, what you want them to do, but it is also about coaching. It is also about sharing. And leaders need to be able to teach and to inspire people. So, of course, as a leader, our job is to first, to give people, a sense of purpose, what we are doing and all that. As a leader, our job is to actually to have ownership. Right? Okay, even though we are working for a company or maybe working for our own business, it doesn't matter. We should own, everything end to end, so that we are the steward or the guardian of this whole franchise. And number 3, our job is to create a very clear path of success with a clear execution plan. And finally, it's about empathy, right? It's about listening to people and making sure that everybody succeeds along the way. So this is what I call the hope. The leader gives hope, right? Higher sense of purpose, ownership, the path of execution, the success, and empathy with people, right? But more importantly, the leaders must be able to inspire, right? And inspiring people requires a lot of storytelling.
Yeah.
And therefore, I find that this whole way of communicating through LinkedIn is about inspiring my colleagues, myself, to grow in this whole journey.
Right. So actually, there's 2 things in my mind I was going to put across. Maybe let me start with something more to the bank first. I think there's so much to talk about as a person for yourself, and I'll leave that to the end. But let's talk about the bank first. Obviously, DBS is very well known by now, but I think at the beginning, the humble beginning, you used to have a nickname of, Dying Bloody Slow, aka DBS. The transformation of that to the most innovative bank as it is today. What is that success factor in transforming the bank?
So it's interesting that you said that, because I joined DBS back in 2001, right, more than 20 years ago. And to be honest, when I left JP Morgan to join DBS, many of my colleagues and my friends were concerned for me, right? Because they were like, hey, why did you leave, a very good company like JP Morgan, international bank, to join a Singapore bank that is trying to find its footing? But I told them that, well, because I understand the intent. The intent at the point in time was for DBS, to become a bank that is able to make impact not just in Singapore but in the region, in Asia, but also to work to become a very good quality bank. And to me, I think that's quite inspiring because when we look at Singapore, we have a very famous company, an iconic brand called Singapore Airlines, right? SIA. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when we look at banks in Singapore, actually at the point in time, we don't really have a world-class bank. And I find that very hard to accept because if Singapore actually wants to be an Asian or international financial center, then we should at least have one Singapore headquartered bank that is of that kind of stature and quality. So, in my own idealistic way, I say, okay, doesn't matter, I'm giving out JP Morgan, but you know what? I'm willing to actually be part of this journey. But to be honest with you, when I joined the bank, it was a bit of a challenging period because we were learning, right? It's kind of like when you are trying to grow up, you have to go through a lot of growing up pains, right? Because we were learning how to be a regional bank, we were learning how to run businesses in different parts of Asia, and we didn't have enough people. Our bench was actually very weak at the point in time, and you're right. So when my friends or my relatives ask me, where do you work? I will have to say, okay, I work in the financial services industry. And they was, okay, which segment? I was, okay, I work for a bank. What kind of bank? A commercial bank. And okay, then they will have to ask me which commercial bank. I was, okay, it's actually a Singapore bank. And then finally, I had no choice to say DBS Bank because it was quite embarrassing to even say that I work for DBS because it was then known as the damn bloody slow bank. Okay, yeah, but we are very lucky to then, after GFC, or after the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, we were able to hire, right, Mr. Piyush Gupta, ex-group CEO, and that was the start of a very amazing journey of transformation that we worked with him to make DBS what it is today. And I'm really very happy to share that today, I think that we do feel that we are now making a lot more impact, right, to our customers, to our employees, but also to our shareholders. And we look at, the financial metrics, they are just quite amazing, right? Our ROE is 18%, cost-income ratio is about 40%, our rating is double A minus, which is actually very rare, a very safe bank. And I think those are the outcomes, and our employees have voted DBS to be, a very good employer for many years. If we look at our employee engagement survey scores are very good. Customers are also much happier. And more importantly, I think it is this whole notion of creating a culture that everyone in DBS actually embraces the spirit of innovation, of wanting to actually make a difference, in the way we work, in the things that we do for our customers, and to make banking joyful. So this is kind of like the change that we have seen. So in summary, there are three things that I think we want to call out in the transformation process. One is that we were very sharp at capturing, the right moments, the right trends. So we were quite spot on the strategies, whether it's the rising of Asia wave, right? And opening out of China, the urbanization opportunities in Asia, the rising middle income class that we could actually do more wealth business, the intra-Asia trade finance. So that was one big agenda. Then the second piece was about digital, right? How do we use digital to acquire more customers, to have more transactions, to engage them better, and the use of data and AI, right? And then in the recent years, of course, is this whole focus around sustainability, right? So these were the three big waves that we captured. And going forward, of course, the focus of Gen AI is another emerging wave. Now, the second thing that we were also, I think, very disciplined is on execution, right? Because you can have very good strategies, but if you are not very good at execution, then it's just an illusion. It's just a mirage in the desert. So execution was also important. And I feel that DBS was actually very agile. We were very nimble in the way we went about, executing against a strategy. But if you don't have a good strategy, your execution is also just a hobby. And so you need to have a very good strategy to actually anchor your execution. But finally, what is the most important is this whole purpose-driven culture. How do we continue to actually make impact to our customers so that banking is not just it's not a chore, right? It's not a toy, right? It's actually a joyful thing to do, right? And therefore, purpose is what we have been very focused on in driving this whole transformation. Don't forget, DBS started off as the Development Bank of Singapore back in 1968, 3 years after Singapore became independent. So we've always been there to actually enrich lives, to transform businesses, to make banking joyful. And so purpose is important because without purpose, then it is just like a straw man without soul. So therefore, three things, right? Number one, we were very spot on the strategies, right? Capturing the right moments, the big trends. Number two, we were very disciplined and agile in the execution. And finally, it's about creating a purpose-driven culture. These are the secret sauce of our...
Nice. Very, very good summary of the 3 points. I bet GPT can does that.
GPT can do that also. I'm sure if you go and ask them, but I think they can't tell you a lot of the behind the scenes.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It doesn't have enough knowledge and hands-on experience. Talking about capturing the moment, I believe in 2014 there was a significant moment in the bank where I think Piyush and I think Peter at the time was your chairman, visit Alibaba and met with Jack Ma. And that kind of transpired him to putting 200 million into the digital transformation journey strategy. I think you also touched on execution was very core part of that. So digital to the core makes sense for DBS, as you've seen, how of Alibaba, they providing services, especially banking services, without being a bank. I think that was quite a wake up moment to you guys. And you further went to see other innovative company in the US. Do you feel like the bank is today a tech company? Since you're inspired by this digital to the core, but as a bank, the core is still banking, right? So how do you see this core, digital to the core as a concept from both conceptually designed versus execution, managing banking as well as being a very tech savvy, companies?
Yeah. So I think that's a very good question. And I think that we want to just make it clear, right, to our friends that we are a bank. In spirit, in form, we are a bank. And that's why we exist. And we exist also because we were given, a license, from the regulators. But not everybody can operate a bank. You must actually be regulated, right? We were licensed. We are chartered industry, right? Because we are given this mandate to build trust with our customers. Having said that, DBS today is a bank that is very tech-driven, that is very data-driven, and that's very AI-driven. That's for sure. But that doesn't take away, our soul. Our soul, our body, maybe we look a bit more tech, a bit more AI and all that. But the soul actually is we are a bank. That's what we do for a living. And we should always do that is because in any economy, there is a need for someone or some organizations to intermediate the capital flows, right, to facilitate payments, right, to provide, financing, to support investments, to help, people do, risk management or hedging on everything, right, that you have to touch money flow, right? And I think that is the role of a bank. Now, the form of a bank might not remain the same. So you're right. So like Alibaba, right? They are not a regulated bank per se, but they are performing, the role of a bank to some extent. And that's why we are very alarmed, when we went to meet Jack Ma and the team back in 2014. I think it was a very good wake-up call for us that people need banking services, but banking services need not be only provided by banks. It can be provided by anyone that has got the products, the platforms, the data, and whatever that the capital. So long as you can do that, you can be a bank, right? Except that, because as a bank, set up many years ago, we have probably not thought of doing banking in those ways. But if we don't start also pivoting towards that direction, then today, okay, I'm sure we will be confronted with a bigger challenge, because as we know, there are already many other forms of banking-like entities that have emerged, right? Whether is it your digital banks with no branches, whether is it your platform companies, whether is it your very niche kind of players that is in the payment space, in the loan space, in the wealth space. These people are really coming in. So the good news is that we have prepared for this day for the last 10 years. We've been doing that since 2014. And I think that we are very well positioned when the investments that we make on technology, where the investments that we have made on looking at the whole business from a customer journey angle, and also making sure that we have been creating this culture of startup among our people. And that is what I think we need to do. Yeah.
On the note of advocating the startup-like culture, do you believe elephant can dance? I mean, it's a famous quote, it was written, I think, for IBM, elephant can dance, indicating that a large corporate can act, with a very good velocity and speed. Do you believe it's possible?
Elephant cannot, sorry, there's a quote that says elephant can act, right?
Elephant can dance.
Can dance. Elephant can dance. Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that quote, but I think what we have actually been told when we started on this journey, by some of these digital companies, was that in order for you to really, implement all this transformation agenda, you need to have a group of wolves. Wolves, yeah. So because this is about taking risk, it's about actually being adventurous, it's about actually exploring new frontiers, it's about people who are willing to fail and all that, right? So, and therefore you need actually a herd of wolves. Yeah, and you know what? The people that you have in the bank, in the traditional banks, they are just sheep. They're very nice, gentle sheep and all that, right? Now you got to bring a herd of wolves into the bank in order for you to progress. So when we heard that, we were quite stunned, because that is against our culture. Because we believe that as an employer, as a company, we have to bring our people along this journey. We are not a hire and fire company. After all, to us, loyalty, commitment with our people is very important, right? Yeah, it's a family culture. So we said, no, we're not going to fire people. We're not going to, just bring a herd of wolves to replace all the sheep. Instead, we believe that sheep can also be wolves. But that requires, therefore, a very thoughtful process to change the mindset and the culture of our people. And that is the most difficult. So, so Leo, I'm sure you study Chinese, history and literature and all that, right? Yeah. And you know that during the Ming Dynasty, there's a very famous general. Actually, he was the Minister for Defense. At the same time, he was a very famous Confucius scholar, Wang Yangming.
Wang Yangming, yeah.
Wang Yangming. So if you go to Taipei, there's a very famous water called Yangming Shan. Yangming Mountain is actually named after Wang Yangming.
That's right.
And so Wang Yangming is actually he's the Minister for Defense, 兵部尚书. He's also 一个大儒. He's a Confucius scholar, right?
Exactly.
So Wang Yangming actually has a very famous saying. It is easier for Wang Yangming as a general to go to the mountains and actually capture all the bandits than for him to actually arrest the hearts and souls of people. And that is very hard. And what I'm trying to convey to you is that together with our group CEO, Piyush Gupta, and many of our leaders and everybody else, right, in the bank, we managed to move, right, the organization forward with this, transforming the sheep to wolves. Now, when I say wolves, I don't really mean that they're all out there to kind of like prey on everything, okay? But at least there is this bigger intention, ambition, and confidence to go out and face the world and say, look, we are a bank that's headquartered in a little red dot called Singapore. It's a very small place, but that doesn't mean that we cannot be that iconic company. That doesn't mean that we cannot create an impact that's beyond Singapore. That doesn't mean that we cannot be the world-class organization because of the spirit that we have. which is to be the best every day.
Okay. I'm gonna ask a personal question in the sense of how people perceive Singapore as a country, and Singaporean as professionals. I think there's a perception of Singapore as a country of well managed, almost like a company. Therefore, the people who are very I think everyone is inspired to be the elite group, and they're trained well, they educate well. But there tend to be certain viewpoint, can they think outside the box? And I think what you just mentioned, like the journey of DBS, is a great reflection of, yes, Singapore people are trained well. They think like managers, professionals, but they can be wolves. They can think outside the box. But is this something you see as unique to DBS? Do you see how do you transform people to think differently?
I think you have actually touched on a very important point. Okay? Both Singapore and also for DBS and Singaporeans at large. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but having been a Singaporean in my last 57 years to this point, okay, I think I do have some credibility to comment. We have to first look at the genesis of Singapore, right? So this year, Singapore celebrates our 60th birthday. Singapore was actually part of our neighbor Malaysia, and then we were kicked out in 1965, and we were forced into independence. But if you look at Singapore is just one small island. We are kind of like the size of Manhattan. That's about it, right? Slightly bigger than the size of Taipei City. That I spent 5 years in Taiwan, that's what I know. So what do we have in Singapore? Number one, we are very lucky that we are positioned at the southernmost peak of the Malayan Peninsula. So it's a very strategic position whereby a lot of the trade flows will go through for shipment. So we, and as a result of which, we are lucky also because, we were able to make use of the seaports, right, the harbor that we have. Right? And at the point in time in 1965, we only have a very good seaport. We didn't even have an airport that's credible. So we only have one lung. Today, we have two lungs. We have got a seaport and airport that are world class.
Yes.
That's all we have. Number two, we have only people. People is the only resource that we have. Okay? We have no mountains, we have no river, we have no minerals, we have nothing, right? So therefore, when we became independent, the only way to survive is to make sure that we are able to add value to the whole world, right? By having a very, very productive workforce. And hence, from day one, the investments on people is a key agenda. Okay? But to be fair, at different stage of our development, you need different skill sets. Because in the early days of Singapore, okay, we were trying to attract a lot of FDIs to come in to set up factories and all that. So it was a bit like the Maslow's hierarchical needs. Minimum is about just physiological needs. It's about how can we just survive. So when we had to survive, it was all about creating jobs for people in the factories and being very, I would say, templated, okay, workforce. Okay. But at the same time, we continue to invest in upgrading our people over the years, by working through different schemes and training. So then our white collar workforce also then increases. Then at the same time, the government or our leadership continue to actually guide us to say, hey, we have to be responsive to changing trends in the world, right? So that's why, for example, in 2015 or 15. We launched the Smart Nation Agenda for Singapore. And the Smart Nation Agenda, involves also the use of AI. And that's why, we then started to, in DBS's case, we work with, the government of Singapore to, work on, a lot of these different use cases, but to also upskill our people. So to answer your question, I think that the DBS story is a bit like a microcosm of the Singapore story. After all, a lot of the iconic places that you see in Singapore, whether it's the Changi Airport or whether it's the highways or the Raffles Hotel, we played a key part in that, right? Even the first condominium project in Singapore, Pandan Valley, was financed by DBS. Even the first factory, right, that we managed to actually set up in Singapore, involving a German camera company called Rolei. Rolei, I mean, I'm sure you are not, which Rolei is very good. But Rolei is a German camera company at the point in time that we managed to actually invite to Singapore to set up a factory. And DBS was actually a private equity investor in that. Nobody wanted to do that. So we did that. Even though eventually the company collapsed, but it's okay because that was also a place whereby we trained a lot of precision engineers. And all these people, eventually, when they left the company, they became like the backbone of our SME ecosystems that provided a lot of support to all the MNCs coming to Singapore to expand their businesses. So for Singapore and for DBS, I do think that they are quite related. Okay, but in the case of DBS, it's even more unique. It's because we have the added advantage of being not just a Singapore bank, but we're an Asian bank. So we have businesses in, for example, in Hong Kong, in mainland China, in Taiwan, in India, and Indonesia. And we are able to harness the strengths of all these different colleagues from different places and then help everybody improve collectively. Yeah, so I think that because Singapore is an open economy, open culture, open system architecture, we were able to harness, the diversity and the strengths of our colleagues and our whole ecosystem to build this organization.
The metaphor, the comparison of DBS journey versus Singapore is very striking. Like you almost represent a history of development of the country. So. And now you're embarking on a very different, I would say almost different. You're embarking on a new era where AI start playing a big role in the bank. I think you touched about that just now, mentioning about AI use cases. So as of last year, I think the bank reported 370 AI use cases deployed and then generated over 700 million Sing dollars for the bank, value in terms of value creation for the bank. First of all, I wonder, how do you even measure the economic value of these AI use cases? So, and which one of these cases strikes you the most?
Yeah, so good question. So I think that when we look at the AI journey, okay, one thing that we are very focused on is not to just treat it as a hobby, because very often, companies get into all this new technology, and after a while, they can't sustain because you don't get any value out of it. Right? After all, we have to account to our shareholders, but also to our customers and employees. And when we look at this whole AI space and the economic value, there are three things that we measured. One is on the revenue uplift. Does it give us any revenue uplift? Number two is that we say, is there any kind of like cost efficiency or reduction? And number three is about risk management, right? Does it reduce our credit costs or other risks, right? So, and the way we do it is we use A/B testing, right? So we kind of like put our customers who are not subject to AI versus those who are subject to AI models, and then we compare the results and the differences. And as a result, we are able to quantify that, for those who actually were subject to the use of AI models, collectively, we managed to generate about 750 million of value last year. And it has doubled from the previous year, right? We used about 350. And then for this year, we're aiming for 1.2 billion. So the areas that we have actually seen a lot of this upside will be, say, in our consumer banking space, because we have today about 18 million customers in the bank. And there's no way, we have enough, RMs or colleagues to go and reach out to all these 18 million people. So we make use of AI ML models to nudge our customers, whether it's time to actually, invest in a certain product, whether it's in a unit trust, or is it time to actually buy dollar, give it $1 a week now, or buy gold. We also nudge them on maybe, you're about to retire, it's about time to go and buy, some protection policy. Or we nudge you to maybe, use your credit card at certain places that we have certain discounts. So we use a lot of these models to actually nudge our customers. Now, at the same time, we also have models that we actually nudge our RMs to have conversations with our customers. And because the RMs, it will be quite a lot of work for them to remember who to call, who for what purpose. So the models actually nudge them to go and, talk to the customers. Now, at the same time, we also have models that we deploy in the space of, let's say, fraud. right, management, right? Because as you know, scams have become, a challenge for many organizations. But at the same time, we cannot have a model. So we used to have a rule-based model, right? That every time when a customer say make a purchase online on the e-commerce platform, and then we think, hey, maybe there is a potential for scam. So let's block the transaction. Then we will send this transaction and we're going to investigate. And it take a few hours. And the poor customer is waiting online to actually make the payment, which turned out to actually be a false alarm. And so the rule-based model is not very predictive. So we then have to augment that, with a bit of this predictive model to make it a bit more nuanced. And we have improved the whole prediction to be much better to about 95%, right? And that will also make sure that we have a balance between, protecting the customers from scams versus customer experience and the whole journey. Then the other area will be internal audit, which I also used to run years ago. So internal audit today, it's agile audit, right? They can audit anytime, anywhere they want because they have access to all the data. Right? So they run a lot of analytics, right, to kind of know what's going on. Not forgetting our friends from finance department. As a bank, as a business, we need to have ability to look ahead, right? And what is our loan? What is our deposit momentum? What is our wealth business momentum? So finance, these days they are able to provide us a lot of this kind of predictive insights and nudges before month end, so that we could take actions early to intervene in order to still meet our targets during the course of the month. Yeah. So many things that we have done, that I think are quite interesting, and I'm just very glad that we have been very disciplined in making sure that the outcomes are properly tracked and reported.
Yeah. Given AI is touch every part of the bank, from HR to internal audit to customer service and more, what do you see as the biggest opportunity and the flip side of opportunity as a challenge for AI that AI is imposing to the bank?
So I think the AI journey for DBS, it's been quite an amazing one. It pretty much started around the same time that we started digital transformation back in 2014. And to be fair, it wasn't like smooth sailing throughout. When we started, we didn't know what to do. And then we wanted to just learn, right, from people that have done it. So, IBM had a machine called Watson. So Watson was...
people forget about Watson already.
Watson, yeah, they forgot already, but because you learn from history, right? Yeah. So Watson actually took part in the American quiz show called Jeopardy, and it won. And then Watson was also applied in the cancer field. So we said, hey, why don't we partner you, to actually create a model to advise our RMs to provide wealth advice to our customers. But guess what? NLP, right, natural language processing technology, was too early. It wasn't mature enough. So it didn't give us the results that we wanted. And the RMs preferred to actually Google for the answers. So that was a failed experiment. Then, luckily, we had this agency in Singapore called A-Star who came in and said, hey, why don't we work together with you? And they gave us 10 data scientists. And then we work on different models on contextual marketing, cognitive banking, audit, on HR, or whatever, right? But that experiment, that experience was very important with three takeaways. Number one is that we had to first create a very robust single source of truth, which is our data lake. And this data lake, we call it ADA, ADA, Advancing DBS with Analytics. And ADA is named after the first computer scientist, first computer programmer, Lady Lovelace Ada. So today, ADA is an outcome of putting together 12 data warehouses from the bank into one place. And it has got very clear data lineage, it has got very clear, metadata definition. All these are important, and it took us 7 years to build that. The second thing that we did was to create a protocol, right? Because you cannot allow for AI ML models to be deployed in anyhow, right? So we have to have a certain process to guide our colleagues. So we created a protocol known as Alan, and Alan is named after Alan Turing, the first computer scientist in the world. The Turing test, right, in the CAPTCHA, right? Yeah. So the protocol actually also serves as a library. So Alan serves as a library for us to recycle the use of all the models that were created. in order to shorten the time for deployment. So we used to, take 18 months to actually deploy a model. Today, we need probably about 2 months, and that's kind of like, or even less, right, to deploy a model. And the whole protocol comes with a set of guardrails called PURE, right? PURE. It must be purposeful, it must be unsurprising, it must be respectful, it must be explainable. So for example, during COVID time, we wanted to track, the movements of our people to contain the pandemic. And so we created a model. But if you want to do that in another place, say in America, maybe, you have to respect the social norms there because, it's about privacy. So we need to be respectful to different norms. So that's kind of Alan. The third thing that we did was to actually create, a talent pool. We call it data chapter. So what I did was when I came back from Taiwan, I brought together 700 data professionals to form data chapter. And in there are 200 data scientists. So these people are the ones that actually drive, the use of AI ML in the bank. So that's kind of like, I would say, so stage one was about discovery, learning. And that's kind of like the Watson days, the A-star days. And that's until from 2014 to until 2017. Then from 2018 until like recently, it's 2.0 for DBS. That's about the ADA, the Ellen, and the data chapter. 3.0 for DBS, therefore, is about none other than my good friend Jenny I. Why do I call it a good friend? Because it's actually a co-worker. It's no longer just a piece of technology. So to me, Jenny I is now, a very important colleague that has joined us that I think is going to fundamentally transform the way we work. Because we feel that Jenny I, is able to, for example, right, in the past, we couldn't handle unstructured data. So Jenny I can do that. Now, Jenny I can also be conversational, right? It can actually help you. And in fact, I just tested this whole Jubilee lookalike thing.
I saw that.
Yeah, so I'm like, wow, okay. I even use Jenny to compose a song, right? I mean, I composed a song in 2 minutes. Yeah, so I think that it's going to be very powerful. Okay, yeah, but for all of us, for those of us who have used kind of Jenny we know that Jenny has got certain habits. It likes to always make you feel good. Jenny will always try to give you an answer that makes you feel like you are very good, right? You always have. It always has the right answer for you. And that is the risk of hallucination, right? That we must be careful. So I think that as we embark on this journey of using Jenny to transform the way we work, we also need to be very mindful of the risk, including hallucination, that we have to manage. And I think that because of the ADA, the Ellen, and the Pure framework they have created, I think DBS is very well positioned to capture this next wave of Jenny.
I think we're just opening up a conversation to the next generative AI in banking, which probably going to open up another hour. And I'm just mindful of our time. I do want to ask you more about the future, but let me just show you one thing you post, and it's something you also mentioned.
You have a very good collection of all my posts.
I don't even I do my homework.
Okay, I'm going to ask you. I think you're going to be my LinkedIn Jenny I.
Let's just give me. Where is this? There you go. Okay, so let me just share. Early on, you were talking about Pure's epic exit and the firewall. Like I actually watched it. I don't think I have seen anything like this before.
That was last Friday.
Yeah, that was last Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this moment. I mean, I wasn't there, but I can tell how emotionally moved everybody, including himself. And it's an epic exit in terms of firewall, and it connects with people at multiple fronts. The emotion, the work. Let me just stop sharing this. So my question is, obviously you are now, being the CEO of DBS Singapore. I'm sure you're motivated by Pure a lot. How would you lead the bank from now on?
Well, I think the journey that I had with Piyush and many of our colleagues here, to be honest, is something that I never expected, but it was just very inspiring, right? I mean, you have a guy that comes in and he he had a very clear vision of how he wanted the bank to be. And I think that the farewell event that you saw is a perfect way to exit a company for a leader, right? That you know that you have done something special. You don't you have done something because there's no way your folks will be so forthcoming, so respectful, wanting to come and celebrate this moment with you, and try to say 临别意义. Everybody felt that Piyush made a difference in their lives. So even for me, when he joined the bank, I was running internal audit. I'm an accountant, okay? I'm supposed to be an accountant that's just doing audit, work, accounting, right? I would have never thought that one day I am able to do a bigger job like running the whole country.
I know.
So I think Piyush, to his credit, really stretched our imagination. So he stretched our imagination not just about the business, but he actually stretched our individual imagination and say, hey, look, I see this strength in you, and I think that you can do something different with a bigger impact, and therefore I'm going to give you a chance to try different things. So if there's anything I want to call out that is part of his legacy for DBS, is his relentless focus on growing our internal bench strength. And that is a very big commitment, because every year people like me, my colleagues, and many other leaders, we spend a lot of time going through our teams, the people that we want to actually develop and not the high posts, the talents. And it was a very robust process whereby we go through name by name, we discuss the strengths of the person, the weakness, and then we say, okay, what is the potential next role in 1 year's time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time? And we try to work towards that plan and execute according to it. And it requires a lot of give and take among the different people in order to accommodate all these changes, right? Because we must create opportunities to ventilate the system. And I myself I benefited from this system, right? So if there's one thing that I really want to do, right, in order to honor Piyush, is I want to continue to actually find the gems in the bank. Whether is it a sparkling gem, is it a raw gem, or it's a hidden gem? Yeah, I want to be the person that is able, right, I want to be the polar. He was the polar to me, right? Yeah. And I want to be this polar to people that is able to create the next generation and future generations of people for DBS to continue to thrive and be that lighthouse in a world of darkness.
Wow. Can I ask you then, you can choose not to say if it's still confidential. Like, what have you changed in the last few months since you became the CEO?
Since you asked me, maybe that's a good moment to reflect. It's been 3 months already. I think that I have learned a lot more of what our frontline colleagues do in Singapore compared to the past. So when I was in Singapore, before I went to Taiwan, I was doing more the operations, the compliance, audit. So I didn't have a lot of frontline engagements. Now when I went to Taiwan, I did. So Taiwan, I also knew that our people was very committed and very engaged with customers. But when I came back to Singapore and when I did this role 3 months ago, I realized that our colleagues at the branches. So on my first day on the job, 2nd of January this year, my first stop was to go visit the branches. When you went to the branches, when you see that there are so many Singaporeans there, waiting to be served for different purposes and all that, okay? And our colleagues are there and are being very patient, very attentive and trying their best, very earnest. Now, that kind of job requires a lot of commitment. Not everybody can do a job, but what they do, I think quite often is taken for granted. So I learned something. I learned that, it's humility. It's about respect. It's about commitment. It's about willing to just want to be with the customers, with the neighborhoods. And to me, that is the starting point, okay? And because of that enlightenment, okay, it reminds me that whatever we do, let's not forget that we have many colleagues who come to work every day with a very single purpose: how to actually make our customers happier. It could be the very mundane things, it could be a very small thing, but they just do it with a lot of, I would say, passion. And if they do it like that, then my point to myself is that if I am their country manager, if I'm their leader, I better do even more.
Wow.
I must do more, because if they are like that, then I better do more, and therefore, it is my job to then spread this kind of mindset and passion and commitment among all colleagues, so that DBS continues to be that very meaningful organization in Singapore that can continue on our whole journey ahead with many Singaporeans.
Thank you. Thank you, Him Chuan. I'm mindful, I think we've got probably 2 minutes left. I just want to do a quick speed question of, it's basically something spontaneously. I want just to see how you answer these questions and reflect like your true personality, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. Do you think complacent is the source of happiness?
I don't think being complacent is a source of joyfulness. Because if you're complacent, frankly, you might be irrelevant, and I'm not sure whether that will make you joyful. But being contented according to your expectations will be a source of happiness.
Okay. Do you believe in necessity is the mother of innovation?
Yes.
Okay. If you have an opportunity to recommend a graduate, let's just say if your son graduated from university, would you recommend him or her, him, to work for a corporate or work for a startup?
Corporate.
Why, if I may?
Okay, so for corporate, it doesn't mean that you have no chance to behave like a startup. But as a startup, you have to behave like a startup. So I think a corporate role is, in a sense, you have the best of both worlds, because you are paid to do your job, but you're also paid to take risk and to behave like a startup, and you still have a chance to start again and again. It doesn't work out. But if you're a startup, you're on your own. But that's kind of like my own orientation. Different people have different appetites.
Of course. I think me being a person is probably a reflection of that, like a startup being a corporate, climbing the ladders, and now doing my own startup. With that, Him Chuan, it's been a really, really wonderful, insightful session with you. We talk a lot, shared a lot. I think we connect a lot. Thank you for sharing all your insights with us. We're looking forward to see the continuous success of DBS Bank as you as the CEO of the bank. Hopefully, I will see a more viral post from you in the years to come.
Thank you so much, Leo. I look forward to seeing you again one day, either in Singapore or in Hong Kong.
All right. You have a
Thank you.